Have you ever stayed at a hotel so creepy you would have felt safer sleeping in your car? Tonight, I'm bringing you 3 real stories, each one more disturbing than the last, all involving seemingly normal hotel stays that took a terrifying turn. These aren't ghost stories. These are the kind that make you double-check the door lock before you go to sleep. Story 1. Room 12. Daniel Harper was never the kind of person afraid of staying in roadside motels. He had driven across much of the country, and on long trips like that, you end up sleeping wherever you can, gas stations, rest stops, sometimes even in the car. But that night, something felt wrong. He just didn't know what yet. It was a 20-hour drive to his parents' house. Normally, Daniel powered through in one go, but that day he had left later than usual, hit heavy traffic, and by the time he was just a few hours from the finish line, he could barely keep his eyes open. He stopped at a gas station in the middle of nowhere to stretch his legs and realized he couldn't keep driving. The attendant told him there was a motel about 5 miles up the road. Nothing fancy, but it would do. The town, if you could even call it that, was basically one strip of road, a dimly lit diner, an old gas station, and the motel. Riverside Inn read the flickering red neon sign. Daniel parked in front of the reception office and walked in. The lobby was empty except for a woman sitting behind the counter, smoking a cigarette and reading a worn-out magazine. She looked at him like he had just interrupted something she didn't want to be doing in the first place. "One night?" she asked. He nodded, paid in cash. She handed him a key with a plastic tag that read 12. "Last room at the end of the hallway. Keep it down, it's late." The hallway was dim. Old carpet, musty smell. Daniel passed maybe 5 doors before reaching his. Nothing special inside. Queen bed, old TV, thick curtains. He took a quick shower, threw on a clean shirt, and crashed. The bed was stiff, but he was exhausted. He passed out immediately. He didn't know how long he had been asleep when he woke up with a distinct feeling that someone else was in the room. He didn't hear anything. He didn't see anything. It was just a presence, like being watched. He stayed completely still, listening. No footsteps, no breathing, but the room felt different. And then he noticed something. The closet door was slightly open. When he had entered the room, he was sure it was shut. He sat up slowly. He didn't want to turn on the lights. Instead, he grabbed his phone and switched on the flashlight. He walked toward the closet. The handle was cold, though it felt like it had been touched recently, like it still held the warmth of a hand. He opened it slowly. Nobody inside, but what he did find made his stomach drop. 3 backpacks, 1 large suitcase, a bag with documents, a jacket stained with something dark, wallets, a phone, shoes, a used toothbrush. None of it was his. It didn't look like something a previous guest had forgotten, either. Everything was neatly organized, like someone had just moved in or was living there now. Daniel stepped back, trying to make sense of it. Maybe housekeeping had used the closet for storage. Maybe it was some kind of lost and found. But then he saw something that made his blood run cold. On top of one of the backpacks, there was a key identical to his with the number 12. That's when he heard the window slam shut. He ran to it and caught a glimpse of a man sprinting into the woods behind the motel. The man wore a hood and carried one of the backpacks that had been in the closet. Daniel grabbed his phone and called the front desk. It took several tries before the woman answered. He told her what happened. She just said she'd check it out and hung up. She didn't ask for his name. Nothing. 5 minutes later, 2 police cruisers pulled up. The woman didn't come out from behind the desk, just pointed them toward his room. The officers did a quick sweep. They took the bags and the suitcase, wrote down Daniel's statement like it was nothing special. One of them, a younger guy, seemed more unsettled. He told Daniel there had been a string of robberies at roadside motels in the area. The thief was never seen. Guests would wake up to find things missing. Motels always claimed nothing had been stolen or that the guests had misplaced their belongings. Daniel asked if they caught the man. The officers said they had followed footprints into the woods, but lost the trail. The backpack he took was never recovered. Strangely, the receptionist claimed she never saw anyone come in or out that night. And, of course, none of the security cameras worked. Daniel went back into the room only to grab his stuff. As he was leaving, one of the officers stopped him. You saw an ID in one of the bags, right? Yeah, a few of them. One belonged to a man who went missing 2 weeks ago. His family thought he went on a camping trip. He never came back. Daniel couldn't drive after that. He sat at a 24-hour diner for the rest of the night, trying to process what had happened. Who was that man? How many people had stayed in that room before him? And what was in that missing backpack that even the cops never found? To this day, whenever Daniel checks into a hotel room, he inspects the closet first, and he never, ever sleeps with the closet door even slightly open. Story 2. The Man at the End of the Hall. At that time, Michael's apartment was undergoing an emergency renovation because of a leak that had destroyed half of the kitchen ceiling. The company responsible for the repair said it would take at least 2 days to fix everything, so they offered him accommodation in a nearby hotel. Not wanting to bother anyone by asking for a place to stay, Michael agreed. The hotel was about 5 blocks from his building, the kind of place you barely notice exists until you actually need it. An old facade, a faded sign, no receptionist in sight. But when he entered, there was a surprise. The lobby was clean, even freshly painted. Silent, with a faint smell of disinfectant. Michael rang the bell, and after a few seconds, a man appeared. Tall, thin, with deep dark circles under his eyes and a uniform that looked too big for him. He served Michael mechanically, as if he were only there in body but not in spirit. He said Michael would be in room 204, second floor, at the end of the hall. He handed over the key and went back behind the counter without another word. Michael climbed the stairs. There was no elevator, and upon reaching the second-floor corridor, saw a man standing at the far end. He was completely motionless, as if waiting for something, wearing a gray hoodie and jeans, hands in his pockets, head down. When Michael began walking down the hall, the man lifted his eyes and stared at him. The look was strange, not aggressive, but empty, unblinking, unwavering. The presence clung to him, unsettling. And to make things worse, Michael's room was the very last in the row, the exact spot where the man stood. As he got closer, the stranger slowly stepped aside, took 2 steps to the left, and entered the room next to his. The door closed silently. Michael entered his own room. The key was one of those old-fashioned ones with a plastic tag. The room was simple: double bed, built-in wardrobe, a desk, a small bathroom. Clean, but heavy with a sense of abandonment, as if it hadn't been used for a long time. He closed the door, locked it, checked the window, locked too. But the door's lock had a strange looseness, as if it had been forced before. He tried to relax, turned on the TV, ordered food on an app, and played with his phone. The silence in the hall was absolute. Not a sound. No other guests. No cars outside. Later, around 11 p.m., someone knocked on the door. A short, dry knock. Michael stood up, suspicious, and asked who it was. I think I left something inside, said a low male voice. He recognized it. The man from the hall. Sorry, I think you've got the wrong room, Michael answered. No, it's this one. Something of mine is in there. In the drawer. I need to get it. The words set off alarms in Michael's mind. I just checked in. This is my room. Silence for a few seconds. I know, but it's still there. The insistence made Michael's stomach turn. He went to the dresser, opened the drawer, and found a wallet. Brown, worn. Inside, documents belonging to a man named Eduardo Lacerda, cash, and a car key. Michael returned to the door. I found the wallet. I'll leave it at the reception for you to pick up. No. Open the door. Now. The tone changed. Cold. Authoritative. Michael didn't respond. He grabbed his phone and called the reception. It rang and rang, but no one answered. He banged on the door from the inside and said, I'll leave the wallet out here. If you want it, take it, but I'm not opening the door. He placed the item on the floor, locked the door again. He listened. Light footsteps. The man picked up the wallet. Michael thought it was over, but then the doorknob turned, and after that, the door was violently forced. The intruder was trying to break in. Michael locked the chain, shoved a chair against the knob, and dialed 911. Before he could finish the call, the bottom of the door splintered. The chain barely held. The man's face appeared through a gap. "Why are you making this difficult?" he said. And then Michael saw it. The man had a gun, a pistol pointed inside. Panic surged. He ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and piled everything he could against it. The sink, the towel basket, even the trash can. From outside, noises, the chair dragged would breaking. Michael stayed on the floor, breathing as quietly as possible, phone shaking in his hands. He called 911 again. This time, someone answered. He explained quickly what was happening. The dispatcher said a patrol car was on its way. After a few minutes, which felt like hours, the noises stopped. Michael only left the bathroom when he heard voices in the hall. This time, it was the police. When he stepped out, the door to his room was wrecked. The man? Gone. He had taken Michael's phone from the nightstand, his backpack with laptop, and his wallet. The police took his statement, asked several times why he was staying there. One officer seemed more suspicious of Michael than of the attacker. At the reception, now empty, it was revealed that the man who had handed him the key wasn't a hotel employee. The real receptionist had been tied up in the back hours earlier and was only found later, unconscious. In other words, the attacker had set everything up from the start. He had placed Michael right next to him, waited for him to discover something, and tried to take it back in the most direct and violent way possible. To this day, Michael has no idea what was really inside that wallet. Were the documents real? Fake? The police never followed up. All he knew was that he left vowing never to sleep in a cheap hotel again. Not for one night. Not even for free. And the part that haunted him most was knowing that, in that silent corridor, no one heard anything. No one helped. And if the man had gotten in? Story 3. The Trap in Miami. At the time, David had just been promoted at work. It wasn't a high-ranking position, but enough to earn him one of those corporate perks, an all-expenses-paid trip to a business event in Miami, with a nice hotel stay, the option to bring a guest, and a flexible schedule. He brought along a co-worker, Gustavo, a good guy, a bit of a joker, but trustworthy. Most of the events were routine, panels, workshops, awkward coffee breaks with people in suits trying to look interesting. But on the last night, as expected, they decided to go out and celebrate. Gustavo knew a bar nearby, claiming it was lively but discreet. They took an Uber, arrived, and it was exactly that. Low lighting, pleasant music, a few occupied tables, a moderate party vibe. They sat at the bar, ordered drinks. After a while, 2 women approached. Attractive, well-dressed, and friendly. Conversations flowed until they naturally split off. Gustavo with one, and David with the other, who introduced herself as Letitia. She was engaging, funny, the type who seemed to command any room she entered. They talked for hours. When the bar began to empty out, Letitia asked, "Do you want to continue this night somewhere more private?" David hesitated. He had been drinking, but was still aware. He thought, "It's just one night. Tomorrow I go home. What's the harm?" She suggested her room at a boutique hotel just 2 blocks away. He agreed. The hotel was small, 3 stories, a tiny reception desk with trendy decor. They walked past the receptionist, who didn't even look up, took the elevator. The room was comfortable, neat, with dim lights and a strong, sweet perfume lingering in the air. Letitia slipped off her shoes, played music on her phone, and fell back on the bed laughing. So far, everything seemed fine. But something nagged at David. The room was too clean, perfectly staged, as if no one had stayed there yet. "Did you check in today?" he asked. "HM? Oh yes. Earlier today," she replied, still scrolling on her phone. "I thought you said you'd been here since yesterday." She froze for just a second. "Did I? I don't remember. Maybe I misspoke." Her tone wasn't nervous. It was rehearsed. And then, the door opened. No knock. No warning. A man walked in. Dark-skinned, strong, neatly trimmed beard, black t-shirt. Calm. Too calm. "Everything okay here?" he asked, looking straight at her. She nodded, but the glance they exchanged was quick, sharp, a silent signal. David understood instantly. It was a setup. He tried to stand, but the man stepped forward and pulled a gun from his waistband. "Sit down," he ordered. David obeyed. He didn't know if they just wanted to rob him or something worse. Lidisha, no longer smiling, grabbed his backpack by the door and began searching through it. She found his phone, wallet, charger. The man came closer. "Where's the money?" "In the wallet." "Work card." David nodded. "PIN." He said he didn't remember. The man leveled the gun at his leg. "Try to remember now." David gave him the code. Fear made it easy, but he also forced himself to memorize every detail. The man's face, tattoos, voice. After a few minutes, Lidisha said, "We've got what we need." The man signaled for David to stay put and walked out, Lidisha right behind him. The door shut softly. David waited a few seconds, then bolted for the reception. "Room 306 was just invaded," he said, still shaking. The receptionist stared at him like he was insane. "I'm sorry, sir, but that room isn't listed as occupied." He insisted. "Sir, room 306 is blocked for maintenance. No one should have access to it." The police were called. They arrived nearly 30 minutes later. They went up with him. The door was locked. His key no longer worked. They forced it open. The room was empty. No perfume, no music, no clothes, nothing. As if no one had ever been there. No hallway cameras. The lobby camera had been under maintenance for a week. David gave his statement, described the two. 3 days later, police called him back. That same room had been linked to 3 similar cases. Lidisha had appeared under different names. The hotel had been temporarily rented by a so-called event company, but all documents were fake. Cards cloned. Identities false. Everything had been orchestrated. The approach, the invitation, the room, the man's sudden entrance. And in 2 previous cases, the victims were found hours later on random streets, drugged, with no memory of what had happened. David left Miami the next day, shaken, with the chilling sense he had barely escaped. Now, whenever someone talks about living new experiences while traveling, he only thinks of one thing. Some experiences, you don't come back the same.